Hello, humans, Artist with the Fro, and welcome back to the show. So, we just finished reading the first chapter of the Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG stories, and there's a lot of things that I've been able to sort of glean and kind of understand based on what it was told to us in this chapter. So, here are my first impressions of the story, and we're going to kind of see where this tale of Ray and the Sky Strikers tend to go as we continue. So very early on, we're introduced obviously into the setting, and we learn a lot through the different characters about where we are and how we kind of got here, right? The story takes place in the town of Karma, and we know that there is another town, or at least another city called Spectra, that has sort of been in conflict with Karma for quite a while. So we learned through sort of Celia and Ray and a lot of the interactions between Ray and her sort of AI family that Karma has been around for about 300 years. And the AI have done a really good job of creating a vast sort of town. Like we see through the chapter that the town is actually pretty large. And it's interesting to note that they went to such lengths to create such a large sort of area when we kind of understand that there is still conflict with Spectra. So it just seems a little bit interesting to note that they were able to create a town large enough for maybe hundreds of people, but there's really only like 5 or 6 people that live in here, and Ray's more or less the only human that interacts with all of them. So it's a little bit interesting to note some of the idiosyncrasies that Karma has done. We also learn that through the interactions of Ray and her AI family, that there is not only a society in place, right? We have Celia, which sort of has the setting of kind of like the mother figure. She's the main caretaker. We have Arcus, who kind of is the militant, combative trainer, and then we have Himmel, who teaches all of the AI and Ray about the knowledge and the history, sort of like the archive of the society that they live in. And we learn through Himmel that not only has this conflict been going on for such a long time, but there's sort of a juxtaposition between sort of the free will that humans have and the autonomy, or rather the lack of autonomy, that these AI have. It seems like the AI are very like shoehorned into specific tasks and specific roles, and Ray is able to sort of not basically fall within the purviews of what a robot is, because she's obviously a human. She has free will. She's able to interact with each of them differently and form sort of a relationship with them individually, as opposed to, let's say, if it's Celia and Himmel conversing amongst each other. So in that, we kind of have a very interesting conversation when they're interacting with Himmel and they're going over sort of like their test, right? We learn that Ray obviously is getting older, and she's able to conceptualize and sort of learn different things. She's also able to then apply those things within her like sort of interactions with the AI. However, it seems that the AI, specifically Alarion and Pylon, they seem to be sort of like the younger AI, that they are very limited, not only in their physical capabilities, but also their sort of mental capacity, right? They're not necessarily able to grow up, and because of that, they have very limited sort of memory, right? We learn that Alarion and Pylon, if they were to learn new things or new skills, that they have to sort of overwrite any old memories, right? Now, obviously, there probably is a failsafe, or let's say there's a programming within them that keeps their core like functions, like moving, operating, visuals, etc. But let's say there are interactions that they've had with Ray within her first year all the way up to year 13 that they have now overwritten, and they don't remember, or at least they're not necessarily retaining the memory in order to kind of experience new things. And I think that that's an interesting subplot, because we're going to probably see the difference between understanding the importance of your own personal history and the history of the world, and forgetting, or at least being put in a state where to learn new things, you have to replace the old memory of what once was. So it's an interesting juxtaposition between Ilarion, Pylon, and Rey as the younger characters and how they're interacting with the world. One of the things that I find very interesting is, again, with this concept of memory, or with this concept of overwriting, it also talks about like experiences, right? Rey is able to use certain human interactions to catch the AIs off guard, or to kind of like operate outside of the purviews, right? When she sneaks into her house with Celia, or when she's sparring with both Ilarion and Pylon, right? She's able to do things that the AI don't see as normal, or nor do they see as kind of like within the purviews of what normal things do. And I guess the point that I'm trying to get at is, later on in the story, or at least later on in this chapter, we see that Ilarion and Pylon are in this conflict with Spectra, and Pylon eventually, let's say, dies, or he falls down and he goes into like a perpetual sleep. And it's going to be interesting to see how emotion, or really it's going to be interesting to see how Ilarion conceptualizes his interaction with, or its interaction with Pylon, right? Like, is Ilarion going to remember that Pylon has been destroyed, or is Ilarion kind of going to overwrite that and in a way kind of like circumvent the emotion that it would have felt with the loss of Pylon? And that's going to be interesting to see, because it's like Rey has visually seen her friends and her family getting attacked, while Ilarion was in that interaction. If he decides to overwrite it, then he completely forgets what happened, and he completely forgets his connection to that point in time. So that might, change how he interacts with Rey, right? And he sort of circumvents a lot of emotions, sadness, grief, anger, that he would have felt if he were to remember the fact that he lost his friends and his family. But we also learn that the Sky Strikers, or at least the mechanism that is created that is called the Sky Strikers, is sort of like this enhancement ability, giving humans sort of the capabilities that they normally don't have through sort of this robotic augmentation, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how Rey's ingenuity is going to be applied to sort of the capabilities that the AI have, right? Where, let's say, through the activation or through the engagement of the Sky Strikers, she's able to like fly, or she's able to move faster than a human, or jump higher, and kind of like have her senses heightened through the implication, or rather through the integration of the mechanics of the Sky Striker system. So yeah, there's a lot to glean from this first chapter, and there's a lot of exposition that not only we're being shown, but we're kind of being told throughout this story. So it's going to be interesting to see where chapter 2 takes this, and it's going to really be interesting to see where, let's say, Rose's interaction comes into play, and how Rey is able to use the Sky Striker system to then sort of combat against Spectra. It's going to be interesting to see the conflict, or at least understand where the conflict between Spectra and Karma came from, and kind of seeing how Rey is able to, let's say, overcome that and form her own resolution. So overall, I think this was a really good chapter. I think it leaves a lot to be questioned and a lot to be asked, and it's going to be interesting to see where they decide to move forward in the story. But this was my impression of Oshiji Stories Chapter 1. I'd love to see, or rather hear, your impressions of it as well, and maybe some theories that you guys might have in regards to where the story is going to progress. Obviously, the entire first arc has been completed, so you can continue to read and finish off the series, but we're going to do sort of an in-depth, not only chapter review, but impressions of the chapter post the review, to sort of figure out like where the story is going and how it's going to reach its eventual resolution. But with that being said, I've been the Artist with the Fro. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, And that, my friends, is the show. Thanks for watching.